Welcome everyone. Again, welcome to our Launch and Learn event. So today we're gonna do latest cyber attacks and case studies around Meriton, Latitude, the good guys, the Crown. These are the latest Australian cyber attacks and data breaches. And on top of that, we're gonna do a case study on Colonial Pipeline, which has happened to US. So basically what we do per Launch and Learn event, we usually do 4 Australian case study and 1 case study from US. So Meriton, you might guys have heard about the latest data breach and cyber attacks. So basically the type of the attack was a supply chain attack, and the breach was around PII and potential PHI. The cause was they have shared the data with suppliers, and the impact was quite significant, around 2,000 staff and guests. Latitude, it's a very big one. We're gonna go through the details. I'm just introducing you guys in brief just what we're gonna talk about. But the Latitude is quite big one. So basically the type of attack was identity theft attack, and the breach was around PII, all personal identifier information. The reason is the stolen credential, and the impact is quite significant. It's around 14 million Australians. So if you look at it, so previous Launch and Learn case study, we went through Optus and Medibank. So Optus was about 10 million people. Medibank around 9.8 million people. Latitude around 14 million people. So how many people do we have in Australia? 25 million. So if you look at it, almost everyone data, PII, personal identifier information, is somehow available. It just takes you being with Optus, Medibank, or Latitude. Or if any of you guys have been with 2 of these organizations, so you really need to take this serious, that your personal identifier information is available on dark web. Again, another one that we're gonna go through the details today is the good guys. So basically the good guys, the type of attack was supply chain attack, and the breach was PII data breach, and the cause was the data breach through the concierge loyalty program. This has impacted 1.5 million customers. It's a lot of people, again, 1.5 million people. The last Australian cyber attack and data breach we're gonna do a case study is for the Crown. So basically the type of the attack was the 0-day vulnerability attack, and the breach is around the personal identifier information, PII breach again. So basically the cause is because of doing the late security patching. We will discuss the details, and the impact is mainly around the staff and customers and some of the casino machines. So the last but not the least is the Colonial Pipeline. The Colonial Pipeline, the type of attack is ransomware. So basically the cause was based on compromised login credentials, and the impact was quite significant in United States, which impact the whole gas and petrol supply within the east coast of United States. So we're gonna go through the details as well. That was one of the biggest cyber attacks ever in United States. Let's start the case study around Meriton cyber attack and data breaches. Okay, so this has happened back in March 2023. So it's quite recent. This cyber attack and data breach is still under investigation. So at this point, we should say unidentified. We have some information. There are some suspicions around this cyber attack, but we can't officially release any information because it's still under investigation. So it has happened back in March 2023. It's still unidentified, officially unidentified. The attack type is supply chain attack. So basically supply chain attack is a lot of the time when attackers want to target an organization, they don't specifically or directly target the target organization environment. They go through their suppliers, because a lot of the time the organizations, they trust their suppliers. So they go through the suppliers to get into their specific organization. So that was the case here. So it was a supply chain attack, right? And the breach, the data breach, is around PII, personal identifying information, and potentially PHI. It has not been 100% confirmed, but to some level is PHI as well, which is the health information, personal health information. So basically the cause of the attack was the data was shared with suppliers and other parties, and what has happened, the affected people or the individuals, including guests, mainly the guests, as well as some of the past and present employees in Meritons. So it was not the hotel, but mainly the guests staying at the Meriton Suites. So what has happened? So basically, as part of this data breach, the breach resulted in compromising approximately 35.6 gigabyte of data, including significant amount of sensitive information. So those sensitive information include bank details, birth certificates, like around not necessarily the certificates, but date of birth and all that sort of details. Some salary records, information related to the staff, including tax file number, and also some health information. So, and also the breach, the Meriton, they have already officially opened the case with ACSC, Australian Cyber Security Centre, and Office of the Australian Information Commissioner, and highlighting what exactly has happened. Even if you look at their website, they have a specific web page of what has happened as part of this attack. But the exact amount of people who got compromised is around 2,000 people. The exact number is 1,889 people which they got compromised. So the impact was quite significant on Meriton. They have reached out to each and every person. So as you can see, all these kind of cyber attacks and data breaches, they come with a lot of damages. It could be financial damage, it could be reputation damage, or it could be legal damage, because a lot of the businesses are regulated. So let's say if you are in critical infrastructure, or if you are financial, you are regulated, right? So it can come with legal implication around the licensing and all that sort of things. That aside, it always come data breaches, always come with financial damage and reputation damage. So if you look at this in case of Meriton, so basically what they have done wrong is sharing a lot of data. So the best takeaway from this cyber attack is, so you really need to be cautious of what you are sharing with third parties. So you don't really need to share that much of information. You just need to share as much as they need to have, and also it needs to be for a limited period of time. And a lot of the time, you need to have a proper process to get rid of the information. So all the suppliers, they are not allowed to keep the information. You need to have a policy. It's quite important to have the right policy in place for how long they are allowed to keep those information. Even a lot of the times, if you look at, I've been involved in the projects that, let's say, the third party, they are only allowing to keep the information for a few hours or a couple of days. And there is a formal and official and agreed process how they're gonna get rid of the information. So it's quite important not to share a lot of information, just what exactly they need. And also it's quite important from access perspective, if you are not sharing the data, if you are giving them the access, we do need to follow the best practices when it comes to the solution architecture and giving them the access. There are a lot of security controls that we can have in place, like RBAC, like role-based access control, which say, all right, what is their role within our organizations? How they are getting authenticated and authorized within our directory service. Let's say if you are using Azure AD, we need to define some rules for these third parties, and we need to give them the least privilege. So the least privilege approach is quite important to take. They only need to have access to what they have. This is exactly what hasn't happened properly here. Meriton, they have shared a lot of data I'm personally not sure whether those data were necessary. Let's say hypothetically, if it was necessary, that's a separate information, but how long have they needed to keep the data? Do they really needed to keep the data that long, right? Or if they have had the access to Meriton infrastructure, so how long, what have they followed the least privilege, all that sort of thing. And on top of that, when it comes to having the right security controls, because what we need to understand, we cannot avoid security incident, right? Security incident happens. It's not about if, it's about when. All organizations globally, especially in Australia, if you look at the statistics that we talked about initially, Australia, we definitely have a moment from cybersecurity perspective in Australia. Australia is under attack, right? We have a lot of wealthy people, we have a lot of wealthy organizations. So it's our job to protect our data. We can't avoid an incident. However, what we can have, by having the right security controls, we can reduce the impact significantly. If we are under attack, if we are facing security incidents, we can avoid the impact, significant impact. We can avoid having a significant impact by having the right security controls in place. There are a lot of security controls we can think of, we can look at specifically when it comes to data protection. Do we have the DLP controls in place, the data leak prevention? Are we using CASB solutions like Cloud Access Security Broker? A lot of the data are within the cloud. How we are protecting our data within our data centers, the on-premises, or the data that we are having in the cloud. There are a lot of security controls that you can have in place. But teachable takeaway from what happened with Meriton: do not share the data if it is not necessary. Have a process how the third party is gonna get rid of the data. They don't need to keep the data that long if it's not necessary, and if they are getting access to our environment, we need to define a role for them. It has to be role-based access control, it has to be least privilege, and we need to have the right data protections controls, security controls in place, such as DLP and CASB. Okay, so that's what has happened with Meriton. The next case study that we are doing today is the good guys, cyber attack and data breach. So basically that was another one which has happened in 2023. Again, as you guys can see, 2023 has been full on, right? So the next one, just wait for the next one. The next one is the biggest one, but even so far, the Meriton, the good guys has happened in August. So it's still under investigation. So we leave it at unidentified. So the attack type, again, a supply chain attack, third-party company known as My Rewards. It used to be known as, they had another name as Pegasus Group or something like that. So, but now they've changed the company to My Reward, but My Reward is the same company. So basically, that's the company who's been taking care of the good guys loyalty program. So this is this is a third party. They've been doing loyalty program. So that was a trusted party for the good guys. So they have trusted them. So they left a lot of information with them. As part of the business, sometimes we have to leave the information with the third party. But again, same story. We do not give them more than what they need, and it needs to be a process for them to get rid of the information. So again, the breach type was PII. That's exactly happened. The personal data of 1.5 million concierge member unfortunately got compromised, and also the password of 3,000 it's about 325,000, sorry, customers data, the password has stolen as well. Not all the 1.5 million people password has got compromised. Their personal identifying information got compromised for 1.5 million, but the password is specifically for 300,000 people, 325,000 people for the password. And also 15,000, they got their date of birth compromised as well. So what has happened? What was the impact? The first impact, the good guys, they no longer use My Rewards, and that concierge member brief program is fully closed. So that's not a good outfit, right? So if you look at it, again, it has an impact on the business. They had to get rid of the service because they couldn't manage it well, right? There is no appetite. That benefit member program is fully closed right now, right? So obviously coming with financial damage, they need to spend a lot of money, lot of time, lot of effort to compensate, right? Reaching out to that many people, just telling them that has happened. They have officially put in a statement that what exactly has happened, and they are encouraging their customers to reach out to one of the national, actually they are suggesting to reach out to ID Care, National Identity and Support Community Services, just to ensure that to what level your personal identifier information has been compromised and to what level is available on dark web right now. What we really need to take serious is impersonation, right? When your PII data is compromised, the highest risk that you are dealing with is impersonation. So people can take loan under your name. I was a case, actually, one of my friends, he reached out to me and he said, look, Iman, someone took a loan under my name. They started importing some products under my name. And because his personal information was available, he got compromised as part of one of these recent cyber attacks, and someone else could impersonate him and do a lot of activities under his name. So this is a serious thing, guys. So if you really are concerned, if you've been with multiple of these latest data breaches, let's say Optus, Medibank, Latitude, the good guys, Meriton, or if you've been with 2 or 3 of them, I suggest you guys to change your driving license. You need a new driver license number. You need a new card number. We discussed that before. For Optus, the only driver license number been compromised, not the card number, which is a good thing. But for someone to steal your identity, they need to have both driver license number and the card number. And a lot of the time, the passport number. You can easily change your passport. You can easily change your driver license. So it really depends how many of these organizations you've been with or they have had your personal identifier information. Again, the third party, the third party, they can bring significant security risk to the business. So it's quite important not to share enough all the information. And also the highest recommendation that we are having here is always from your third parties, ask for their cybersecurity testing reports. If you somehow sharing information with them, you need to ensure that their cybersecurity infrastructure is safe and secure. You can even, especially when it comes to a lot of the SaaS provider these days, you are using a lot of SaaS services. You can ask them for SOC 2 reports. Say, look, give us your SOC 2 report, right? Have you done the right security testing within your environment? Have you done the DAS testing? Where is the report? Is the code secure? Have you done DAS testing? Have you done penetration testing? Are you doing a proper vulnerability assessment? Are you doing ongoing vulnerability assessment? Give us the report. And the most important thing, you need to adopt zero trust framework. You need to adopt zero trust architecture and framework within your organization. So basically, by having the zero trust architecture or zero trust framework, you never trust, you always verify. That's quite important, even for third party, even if they are part of the organization. If you look at this, what has happened for the good guys, the loyalty program is kind of part of their organization, right? The My Reward as a provider of loyalty program, obviously if you're providing loyalty program, you need to have all the details of the customers, right? The customers who are at the concierge, and these are usually VIP customers. You are dealing with important, a lot of them are successful businessmen, and their data got compromised, right? So my question is, from good guy perspective, the My Reward has to be considered as the third party. Have they really assessed their third party properly? Have they asked for all the security testing reports? Are they aware of the level of security maturity within the third party? Have they asked the report from the third party? So the good guys, are they adopting the zero trust framework? So there's a diagram here that this diagram is by Microsoft, by the way. I really like this diagram. So if you look at this zero trust framework, this zero trust diagram that they put together is quite important to understand. Zero trust is not a specific product or solution. Zero trust is a concept. You need to is like a puzzle. Look at zero trust as a puzzle, and each and every of these boxes are piece of the puzzle that you need to have a solution and a product for each piece. And you can have it from multiple vendors, right? But the most important piece, I can't stress enough how important is the identity within your zero trust architecture. How important is endpoint protection, the threat protection, the policies, the network security, data protection, application security, infrastructure security. These are all different pieces of the puzzles that you need to put them together to achieve that zero trust. Again, what I want to highlight here, all organizations gonna face security incidents, but if you have all these security controls, all these, if you are following the right frameworks and architecture, if you have the right security controls in place, you can reduce the impact significantly. So a lot of the time it's better to avoid. A lot of the time it's better to avoid and protect. Most of the time I would say it's better to prevent, right? It's better to prevent than cure. So keep your environment safe and secure. Do not trust the third parties. If you look at the last two case studies that we've done, both case studies, that was a third party involvement. That supply chain attack is getting quite common. At some point we had BEC or business email compromise as the most common, which is still one of the most common, but right now the supply chain attack, that's something that you guys really need to consider. Let's proceed to the Latitude. So guys, Latitude was quite unfortunate. This has happened back in March 2023. The investigation is still still in progress. So I would say it's still unidentified who exactly done the attack. It's still under investigation, but the attack type is based on identity theft and ransom. The data breach is around PII, personal identifying information, and the cause of the breach is the stolen credential. So technically, one of the internal systems got breached and allowing the bad actors to steal employees' login and use one of the employees' credential to get their hand to the data. Again, we just talked about the zero trust architecture. So what zero trust architecture is saying is never trust, always verify. It doesn't mean that we do not trust our employees. A lot of the organization, they do trust the employees. However, how about if the employee credential is getting compromised, right? How about if the bad actors is getting their hand to the credentials of your employees? Then what's gonna happen? It's not about not having the trust to your people. It's you just can't fully trust the whole digital environment. That was the case here, which has caused one of the biggest Australian data breaches. This one is really big actually. If you look at the impact, it's about 14 million customers' data, right? 7.9 million Australian and New Zealand driver license and 53,000 passport numbers. So out of 14 million, so around 8 million, they got their driver license compromised. So if you have ever had any kind of finance from Latitude, let's say you purchase something from JB Hi-Fi and Latitude's been financing you, or you have a loan with them, you do need to change your driver license. If you've been with Latitude, this is not the same case as Optus. Optus, I did a case study last time. I said, look guys, the card number has not been compromised, but in this case, that's the driver license. They got a copy of your driver license, which means they have your driver license number and the card number. So they just need your Medicare or passport number to do the impersonation, right? On top of that, additional 6.1 million customer data were stolen, include the different type of information such as date of birth, and address, phone number. So if you look at the whole thing, even it got escalated quite significantly, which our cybersecurity minister, he had to bring together the government agencies to provide support in relation to this attack. They have asked for ransom. In this case, all right, so when there is a ransom, it can have, the attackers can take two different approaches. They can put a malware in your environment to encrypt your data, then they can ask money to give you the decryption key. Or they take a copy of your data and they say, look, we're gonna release the data in dark web if you don't pay us. Which is, in this case, that was the second case. They didn't encrypt the data. That the next case study that we are doing for Colonial Pipeline, they did encrypt the data. So basically, the service provider, they haven't had access to the data, but in this case, they didn't encrypt the data. They got a copy of it, but they said they were demanding ransom for not releasing the data on dark web, which in this case, Latitude, they have already confirmed that they are not paying the ransom, which is the right thing. We don't wanna finance the hackers and the bad actors. So basically, if Latitude pay them, they have more money to do more damages to the other organizations. So unfortunately, as I said, a lot of these data breaches comes with legal implications. So there is a class action. A class action has been launched against Latitude Finance. That's quite unfortunate. So, but the investigation is if they have had enough and right security controls in place to protect their customers' data. So even if you look at the Privacy Act, the amount of fine, it used to be around 2 million, but right now it goes around 50 million. So for a lot of the organization, yeah, paying 2 million, it's okay, but 50 million, it's not the same amount. So the amount of fine has been increased to 50 million, or in some cases, it can go above and beyond 50 million, up to 1/3 of the revenue of the organization. So it's quite important for organizations to take this serious, because when it comes to financial damage, if you look at the Optus case, they ended up with spending around 140 million. It's not only because of the fine, but also because of the money they had to pay they had to fund people changing their driver license, in some cases changing their passwords or getting their credit check, all that sort of things, they are funding it. So the financial damage could be quite significant. So far, the amount of financial damage is around 53 million for Latitude. And also, so they are really encouraging people to reach out to Australia's credit reporting agencies. So you can, there are a few Australian reporting agencies such as Equifax or Experian or Centrix. You can reach out to these guys and ask for a credit report and see if you've been, your credit report has been compromised or has been you have got any negative impact on your credit report. Anyone is trying to get a loan on there, because if you see your credit score is really low, it means, okay, maybe someone is trying to impersonate you guys, getting the loan and all that sort of things. So yeah, that was quite big, 14 million, too many people. As I said before, like 14 million Latitude Finance, 10 million Optus, 9.8 million Medibank, 1.5 million Good Guys. How many people do we have in Australia? 25 million. So pretty much everyone is kind of compromised right now. Everyone's personal identifying information is somehow available on dark web to the extent. So it's quite important to keep an eye on that. So the teachable takeaway, I can't stress enough how important it is to have multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication within your organization. A lot of the time, the multi-factor authentication, it's one important security control, which a lot of the time can protect your environment up to 80%. It's quite important to have the robust data retention and disposal policies. We have discussed that before. And also it's quite important to have enhanced network monitoring and anomaly detection within your environment. That even quite important for the Good Guys. They should have had. So they follow the zero trust and also doing an ongoing threat assessment and security testing. I can't stress enough how important it is to do an ongoing security testing. So cybersecurity technology is an evolving world. We are adopting new technologies every day. We are making a lot of changes within our environment. So security testing, it's an ongoing thing. It doesn't mean that if you've done penetration testing a year ago, it's good enough. No, do it every 3 months, do it every 6 months, right? It has to be an ongoing. Vulnerability assessment report has to be in daily basis. Whenever you come up with new application, if you do your coding, do the SAST and DAST testing, you really need to adopt the DevSecOps operation and the process to ensure you are doing all the security testing across your codes and applications. So it's quite important to follow those kind of things. The next one is quite actually interesting, the cyber attack and data breach for the Crown, because this one has happened in March 2023. And this has happened with the ransom gang group. They are quite famous. It's called Club. They did the attack. So what they have done, the attack type was exploitation of the 0-day vulnerability. So it was the 0-day, all the vulnerabilities are 0-day right at the beginning, but eventually the vendors, they come up with a patch. So this was specifically around the Go Anywhere software that they are using for some type of file transferring. So basically what has happened, it was a 0-day vulnerability around Go Anywhere software, but eventually the vendor who is Go Anywhere, they released the patch for the software, but unfortunately the Crown, they have not patched the system at the right time, which they have ended up affecting the employee salaries and the employee salaries information, and also some of the machines in casino, there's some reports that you can get from the machines got compromised. So that was quite unfortunate, and that was something that they could have avoided, because if you look at the impact, the employee salary information, the machines information, all that sort of things, they got compromised by just not doing the right security patching. So if you look at it, the patch was available, but they really took their time to do the patch, which a lot of the time it can be really late, right? So I would say the most important takeaway from this cyber attack and data breach is do patching as soon as possible. You guys really need to take this serious, right? Because right now, by having AI, the artificial intelligence, what is happening, a lot of the time, these bad actors, the hackers, they keep the record, they identify who is using what. Let's say they target an organization, they say, all right, they're using Microsoft, they're using SQL, or they are using Oracle, or they are using this software or the other software, right? They keep an eye, they know those targeted organizations using what, and they just wait for a 0-day vulnerability. If there's a vulnerability, the vendors, they release a patch, but if the vendors, as soon as the vendors release the patch, everyone knows about that vulnerability. So it's your job to patch your application, your infrastructure. Otherwise, the bad actors, they know what you are using, they know the patch is out, they know about the vulnerability, which technically they know about your security weaknesses if they know you are using it. And right now, by the help of AI, these things happen straight away. Before that, the people used to keep an eye on these things, but now the AI keep an eye on it. So not only we use AI to protect the environment, but the hackers are using AI to do the attacks more organized and effective, right? Because as soon as the patch is out, if you don't do the patches straight away, the hackers can use that vulnerability to compromise your environment. And that's another reason that we need to use security in depth. We use this security in depth. We have multiple controls that these controls, even if you look at Essential 8, the 8 strategies, they work holistically. They really help each other out, because by having multiple security controls, having the security controls and different layer, you can still reduce the impact of the incident, right? But I can't stress enough how important it is to patch. You need to have a proper vulnerability assessment, a proper vulnerability assessment solution within your environment. You need to get daily report, and you need to patch them as soon as possible. A lot of the time, I understand it needs to get tested in non-prod environment, but there are patches that they don't really need to get tested, and they need to apply within the environment as soon as possible. So that's the main takeaway from the Crown cyber attack and data breach. The next cyber attack and data breach that we're gonna look at is what has happened with Colonial Pipeline. So basically that one has happened back in March 2021. That's literally the biggest cyber attack has ever happened within critical infrastructure in the United States. So that has happened by a ransomware group called DarkSide. They could manage to get the login credentials. So it's been the compromised login credentials because one of the employees' login credentials for the VPN got compromised. Apparently, he's been using the same username and password across multiple accounts, which is definitely not the right thing to do. You should not use the same username and password across multiple accounts. You do need to have a password manager to manage your password and have definitely separate password across multiple accounts. But this employee, for some reasons, they could manage to get their hand to his username and password. Unfortunately, the VPN connectivity, so login credentials, and they could manage to push a malware within the environment, which has caused a significant impact on fuel shipment, the gas shipment across the east coast of United States. So basically, based on that attack, the 100 gigabyte of data got compromised. In just 2 hours, they could manage to push a ransom in and get the data locked. So, and the Colonial Pipeline, they had to pay around 4.4 million ransomware worth of Bitcoin just to get the decryption key, right? And look, when the ransomware, when they get you paid, they keep you pay. It's not like you pay once, they say, all right, now the next level, oh, we're gonna put the data in dark web, or you get half of your data back, now you need to pay more, you know? So that got escalated quite heavily, and back then at the time, the United States president, they have to come up with the act for all organizations to improve especially all the government organization to put all the enhanced security controls, even not enhanced, even the baseline security controls such as multi-factor authentication in place. So basically these guys, they have used a same ransomware which has been released, I think Bitdefender, back in 2021, January 2021. So the attack has happened in March 2021. But back in January 2021, Bitdefender, they have released a patch they have released the keys. Say, all right, if anyone is getting this ransom, this is the keys. And what has happened, the DarkSide, they have released a new version of the malware and say, oh no, that key is not working with the new malware. And that's how Colonial Pipeline got impacted. So basically they got impacted with the updated version of the ransomware. But look, it got escalated quite heavily within the government, and at the end, the Department of Justice, they could manage to recover half of the Bitcoin, which got half of the Bitcoin that Colonial Pipeline paid to these guys. So around, they paid the exact number, we have it, 4.4 million. They could manage to get 2.3 million back. However, when it comes to crypto infrastructure, we all understand that how hard and costly is to trace the Bitcoin transaction. So they have spent a lot of time, effort and money to take this 2.3 million back. I don't know how much they paid. I don't know how much they spent to take that 2.3 million back, but I won't be surprised to say, they spent like $1 million to take 2.3 million back, or even they spent 2 million to take 2.3 million back. Because a lot of the time it takes really time and effort to trace all these complicated Bitcoin transactions when it comes to the blockchain. So, and that's why they are using Bitcoin. If you look at the older ransomwares, old days they used to kidnap the kids and ask for a ransom. That's why we call it ransomware. So back then they used to kidnap the kids, the rich people's kids, and ask for ransom. But the hardest part for them was to collect the money. Put the money in a black bag, in a bin. But right now, it's the easiest way for them is collecting the money. They use they use Bitcoin, they use all these different coins to just collect the money. And in most cases, it's really hard to trace them. And a lot of the time, not worth tracing them, as it takes a lot of time, effort, and money to trace them. So that's what has happened to Colonial Pipeline. The most important teachable takeaway is use a proper password security. We have already talked about that. And do not use a same password for the same account. So all the organizations, if the revenue is above 3 million, they have to report the attack. So if an organization is facing an attack and their yearly revenue is above 3 million and they are not reporting that incident, it's a crime. So, and I believe no director wants to be a criminal, right? So it's really hard to hide it these days because most of the directors, they know this obligation, and cybersecurity insurance is quite common right now. Although the premium is going really high, it's quite common. Most businesses trying to get cybersecurity, so they have to declare that. It's like you having an income and you're hiding your income from ATO. It's the same thing, right? It's a crime. So unfortunately, we're gonna face more security incidents, more cybersecurity attacks, but fortunately, most organizations are running their cybersecurity uplift programs, which that's what we offer to everyone, and we suggest to everyone. Whatever is your maturity in cybersecurity, you still need to run a cybersecurity uplift program. You can always be better and stronger in your cybersecurity, and the only way doing the cybersecurity enhancement is to run a cybersecurity uplift program. If you need more details, please feel free to reach out. We can definitely help you guys how to run your cybersecurity uplift program. And also, cybersecurity awareness is quite important. Awareness of what has happened to the organization and awareness training for the employees, because most of the organization, more than 85% of organization get compromised just because of the human error. So what we can do is to uplift our cybersecurity. If you are a government agency or department, Essential 8 is a right framework for you guys to uplift your cybersecurity construct. You need to achieve ML1. You need to achieve ML1 across all 8 strategies. Then you need to move to ML2 and ultimately level 3 for all the strategies. So try to get all the strategies to ML1 and try to get all the strategies to ML2. It's like cohesively these 8 strategies work together to achieve what they need to achieve. So they are public as well. They have already released some statement and there is a legal action against them. So we just need to wait and see what's the case. And they need to deal with financial penalties from OPRA as well. They are regulated by OPRA. So they're gonna face some consequences from OPRA, from ASX and government. So, and there is an act right now against them. So it takes a little bit of time, but definitely for them, it comes with financial damage, regulation damage, and the reputation damage. All right, guys, we are just going over time a little bit. Please feel free to send your questions. I hope you have enjoyed this session. Please watch this space. Follow our YouTube channel. We're going to upload all these videos on our YouTube channel. We have already uploaded the previous case studies on our YouTube channels. Follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on YouTube, and thanks for joining us, and hope we're going to have more interactive sessions and case studies in the future. For now, we are trying I'm trying to run one per quarter. So next quarter, we're going to have the next cybersecurity attacks and data breaches case study. I hope you have enjoyed the session, and thanks for joining us.